Hello and welcome to the sixth episode of Ask a DM, the D&D Q&A show where I get a guest DM on and answer your questions. And I'll introduce who we've got here this week. But first off, I just want to let you know to ask questions if you're in the live chat. If you just preface your chat with question, then it will make it clear that you're asking a question for us. Other than that, we're just going to take your questions. I've got a load from Twitter and my Discord as well, and we're just going to answer them as we go along. And I did say that I was going to be announcing the giveaway winner that I'm doing at the moment, but it actually ends at midnight tonight, so we're not quite there. So I will be releasing that on Twitter, and then next week on YouTube, I will say who the winner was. So if you are here to see who the winner was, I'm sorry, go over to my Twitter at midnight and it will tell you who it is. So let me introduce to you who we have on. Hello, Trevor. Would you like to introduce yourself for everyone?
Sounds awesome. So I'm Trevor, or Classes and Constructs on YouTube and Twitter. I make Magic the Gathering content. Primarily, I focus on Magic the Gathering content. Sorry, D&D content inspired by Magic the Gathering. Flip myself up there a little bit. So I do a lot of like homebrew, monsters, and plot ideas inspired by cards from Magic the Gathering. But I also do like book reviews and general D&D tips and tricks and stuff like that.
Very nice. And I have put the link to Trevor's D&D channel down in the description, as well as Twitter, so you can go follow all the good stuff that he's doing. So we always kick it off with some questions for you about what style of DM you are. So first off, do you homebrew or do you run prepared modules?
Homebrew all the way. I don't think I've actually ever run a full module. I've run the Lost Minds of Phandelver for students before, because I am a teacher. So I've used that one, or like obviously that one with some like homebrew changes for students. But all of my games have been homebrew games, various levels. Before I started playing D&D, I did play Fantasy Age, and that I did a module for. But that was ages ago. I don't even remember. Like, it was Titan's Grave because it was inspired by the YouTube series. But for D&D, it's all homebrew all the time.
Do you do you at least read the modules, or do you not even read them? So you read them and get like some inspiration from them, but
Yes, especially lately. I haven't read some of the older ones. Like as they were coming out, I wasn't getting them, but like the ones that have come out more recently, like Wild Beyond the Witchlight, especially, I'll read them and I'll pull a lot of ideas from them. I've actually used a lot of Wild Beyond the Witchlight just kind of piecemeal in my campaign because weirdly enough, the timing worked out where like my current campaign was in the Feywild when Wild Beyond the Witchlight came out. And I was like, well, I can't run this book whole cloth because I can't, send them back to the material plane and throw in a carnival. But I can add some of the stuff. So like Armador, I think is the name, the Dandelion. I added him in, and some other stuff. The unicorn like lake encounter. I added some things from Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and I really like pulling ideas from the modules, but I have yet to run a full homebrew module, or sorry, a full published module.
fair enough. I think that's a good way to do it, especially if people love homebrewing. You can always get some snippets from the books.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend it. Like starting from scratch, I think is like, especially if you're newer to DMing, I think is a disservice. Like, don't you can pull from ideas, and I think the modules can enhance any kind of game, whether it was originally homebrew or a different module that you started with or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. We got Josh from Dungeoneers back here as well. So hello, Josh.
Hey,
Thank you
Jeff.
for coming by. So what's the highest level you have DM'd your PCs to?
Level, I want to say it was like 13. I think we've
Okay.
never made it to 20, but I'm pretty sure we got to 13 in the last campaign that we played, where my it was with like my normal weekly play group. Uh, my wife was playing a gunslinger. One of our friends was playing a warlock, a hexblade warlock that multi-classed into paladin. And we got to level 13. They fought like a dragon. It was this whole epic battle at the end, but it didn't make sense. The adventure kind of ran its course, and it didn't make sense for it to continue running beyond that.
That's fair enough. It seems that my camera has decided to refocus on my face, so that should go in a minute. Sorry, everybody. Um, Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. That's around about the period I like to end. So I've done a high epic level adventure once, and to be honest, from a DM's point of view, it was hard. It was a lot more work than doing the lower levels and mid levels. So nowadays I try to sort of finish my campaigns around 13 to 15, and finish up there because it's just a bit easier for me.
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to ask that because like I haven't run that high of a level of game, and my players and I have talked about like, oh, what if we tried to do even just a one shot at like level 20? But it just seems, we're like trying to think about it from the player perspective or the DM perspective. It seems really overwhelming to try to run. And I'm glad you mentioned that because that was always, it feels like most of my narratives end more naturally, like 10 to 15, and trying to think about getting them to level 20, unless I do some sort of like time skip, it seems hard. Like it seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, so the one campaign that I got to epic level was 4 years, I think it took us to get there, and then even that only got us to 17 or 18 because they just about got level 9 spells.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to that point, it is hard because especially my players are very creative, I would say, in the way they deal with problems. So you have to be good at improv. You have to be able to just swing with the punches and go because like they used a gate spell to bring some big demon into the fight, and then they use plane shift to and just a load of stuff like that, and it was mayhem, and it was enjoyable. But from my point of view, I was just like my brain just hurt after every single session when
You
it was
can't
hurt.
plan for all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's jump straight into the questions then. So we got Fred from How to D&D here as well, saying hello. So I think he's coming along, and Rich Merry as well. I haven't had a question from you this week, Rich, other than what's up. So I'll wait a question from you. But we have got also I should probably mention actually. So for those of you who are watching us on the different platforms, this is being streamed to multiple platforms. So it's on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. So we have a question over at Twitch. So the Lion of Khmer, across all your games, how often do you see players scribing scrolls for themselves or other players to cast from in actual play? How often do you see that?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. I have seen that more in my current game, primarily because my wife is playing a wizard. And it's something that I think is like, along with like putting spells into her spell book, and it's something it hasn't happened a ton, but it's happened more. And I think that's saying something because like the fact that it has happened at all is noteworthy, which is kind of a bummer, right? Because it's a cool mechanic that I think
Yeah.
could be used more. I know in a lot of the Strixhaven homebrew that I've come up with, that actual question is something that I've tried to lean into, and like giving players bonuses or benefits for scribing scrolls, because I think it is cool and it's like an underdeveloped aspect for spellcasters.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the questions asked over on Twitter that we'll get into later on was about downtime activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a sort of DM start. Like a lot of people don't have the downtime activity now. They just go from event to event to event and never have the downtime. Because I've played in a game once where it quite often, or well, a couple of times, they were like, "Okay, your characters are going to have a month off now. So what would you like to do for that month off?" And that I think because of Critical Role, High Rollers, all these stream games, which are just it's for the viewers, so it has to be action, 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 action,
Yeah.
action. That's what everyone thinks D&D is now. So stuff like that doesn't happen as much because I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think scribing a scroll actually takes quite a bit of time
I think so.
to do,
Like,
especially at the higher levels.
yeah, by raw, I'm pretty sure it takes a long time to do it.
Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the aspects. So for in my games, I don't think I have ever had someone scribe a scroll, and I think it's because of that, because I do it quite action, 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 action.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they do get downtime, they would rather do something else, like
Yep.
learn a new tool, learn a new language, something like that. So
Yep.
I would say that's probably where I'm at. Cool. We've also got How to D&D. So Fred saying that banishment is tough to deal with when we were talking about the higher levels. Banishment is definitely one of those ones which can, well, it's just one roll can completely screw up your your game. So
Yeah, it just
yeah,
ends
definitely.
things.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got the Clerk Corner is in here. Hello, thank you for coming by. So, what Magic the Gathering universe would you like to see be made into a book, like Ferris or Strixhaven?
Oh, this is right down my alley. Riker, thank you. I was just thinking about this earlier, and this is kind of a cop out because I'm going to give two answers. Uh, the first is Lorwyn. So the plane of Lorwyn is when I like restarted playing Magic when I was in high school, which ages me. But it's this like idyllic, almost like fairy tale plane. But then there was, I think it's called the Great Aurora. I think I don't remember the lore behind it. But then everything turned to like shadow, and like all of the creatures became kind of like the evil version of themselves, with the exception of the fairies, which weren't affected by it because like the head fairy was aware. And I just love it. I love that type. It reminds me, and I actually have a video on the channel about like how my interpretation of the Feywild is very much like Lorwyn from Magic. And I think that it's really cool. And they've come out with other since that are like Arthurian legend, but I would love Lorwyn. And Mirrodin, I think, is incredible as a Magic set because it's a plane entirely of metal. So like even the like goblins and elves, they have like metal kind of grafted into their skin. And in the Magic universe, Mirrodin has been infected by like a long recurring enemy, the Phyrexians. So it's like this evil plane. It's not even Mirrodin anymore. But like those two planes, I would absolutely. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I would love to see those planes made into D&D content. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. It sounds awesome. I'm a very casual Magic player, so I know very little about the lore. I just play the cards to win.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff sounds great. I probably should get more into it, really. I know that was also that was one of the questions that Dungeoneers Pack also put. So that was always going to come up with you on the show, I guess.
Yep. Yeah.
being a double. So Rich Merries also said, should you shoot less arrows or more arrows at monks?
Oh, I mean, does the person shooting the arrows know that the monk is a monk?
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna say initially more to give them the chance to use the ability, right? And then less. Like once the creature is aware, once the archer sees the monk grab the arrow out of the air, then if they're an intelligent creature, they're probably not going to continue shooting that person anymore. But as the DM, you want to give the player that, like, let them use that like class ability, let them use that feature.
Yeah, definitely. I like the idea of having dynamic combat as well. So I think last week we were talking about having dialogue in combat as well. So have the bad guys like shouting orders at the other bad guys or shouting stuff at the players. And another aspect of combat I like to try to integrate is them learning. So I like the idea of them shooting like one arrow, finding out that the monk can catch it and throw it back at you, and then shouting to the others, "Don't fire arrows at that guy. He's crazy." And then just get the melee people to run at the monk and try and deal with him that way. I think that's how I deal with it anyway. Which also brings up that there's a lot of small D&D YouTubers in the chat, which is very nice for you all to come by and chat with us. So Rich Mary also said, so how do you guys deal with overcomplications of new players that only have experienced D&D from big streams?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I haven't dealt with this in like my regular games because my regular group I've been playing with for a while, and also my regular group isn't super into kind of they don't have super high expectations a la Critical Role, right? Like my regular group is more of a fan of actual play like Dungeons and Daddies or the Adventure Zone, especially Balance, which are more like improv and comedy driven. So I haven't run into it with those games. With students, I've run into it, but that's also a different situation because like it's easier for me to tell a student or like a student at the school, hey, like this is like kind of top level, this is professional, and this is also one way of playing. But if you're playing with your friends, you can't always expect it to look like this. This is a very different breed of what D&D could look like, and it might look this way, like it might end up looking this way for your table, and it might look completely different, and all of that's acceptable. But I think it's having a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the questions we get on this show can be boiled down to communication.
Yeah.
Be it just chatting and being open with your players. I've never personally had this problem. I've actually had it the other way, where I've had a couple of players that used to play old school D&D, like
Hmm.
back first edition, and then wanted to get back into the game and came into fifth edition, and they still wanted to, have the 10-foot rod and the
Yep.
10-foot pole and all of that stuff. And I had to sort of be like, oh, that's not sort of the kind of game I play anymore. I do make it clear to people who have watched the big streams that I will not be doing as many voices as Matt Mercer. I am not
Yep.
an actor, and I do the voices, but I'm nowhere near as talented as them, obviously, being professional actors. But yeah, I think I, if you're getting a player that is genuinely upset or annoyed that it's not like the big streams, you just have to talk to them and be like, I can't do that.
Yep.
That's different. That's for viewers as well as for the table. They're very talented actors. I can't do that and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It
for
just
sure.
boils down to communication, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned character voices. Like the running joke amongst my table is that like I try my best to do character voices and do voices for NPCs and stuff like that. I will take on my players' character voices and I can't drop it once I do. So like I'll introduce like a silly character voice for an NPC, and then the next time that NPC speaks, I will forget what they sounded like, or I'll just sound like the last character or player who spoke. And my wife or my friends they'll just rag on me incessantly for it. Like it's just a joke. And it doesn't bother me because I know like I'm trying. I'll try my best, but there are times where I'll have to just drop character altogether. I'm like, this is just Trevor. Like, I can't. I don't remember what he sounded like anymore.
Yeah, it is hard, especially with the expectations of the streams now to keep
Yeah.
up with it. I always just go back into like one of three voices. Like it's either very overly English because obviously I'm English myself, a really bad Texan
Hmm.
accent I do, or over the top Spanish accent. They're like the three that it always seems to boil down to for me randomly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't do all the different ones.
There was one
Okay.
time where I had Modrons that my players were fighting, and I used a like text to speech program for
Okay.
them. So I think like I don't remember what the names of all the Modrons are, but like some of them could only say one phrase and others could say like two. But I would actually just have my laptop open and play those text to speech files for those characters and they were interacting with them. And that I thought was a really like fun workaround. And my players thought it
Yeah.
was really engaging too.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Right, let's go on to the next question here. So this was Atlantic Stars Shine on YouTube asked, in your opinion, what multi-class combinations are the most powerful and why? So I guess first, are you a min-maxer or do you play with min-maxers or are you not really into that?
No, I don't tend to play with min maxers. My players are much more like role play driven and like character concept driven than min max. So I don't really normally have to worry about that too much. Uh, they can almost like sometimes they'll accidentally stumble their way into it if they're trying to like look up good spells or good like builds. But it doesn't. They're not trying to break anything, and they're certainly not min maxers. When it comes to this question specifically. I would probably this is a again, I feel like it's a cop out, but I feel like it would be Hexblade Warlock plus anything. Like I feel like you get so much from being a Hexblade Warlock that I feel like that subclass is especially powerful. So I lean on that plus maybe that plus like Paladin potentially. But that might just
Hmm.
be because that was the last like multi-class that I had in a campaign. So it just sticks in my head that like I remember that character being able to do like a suspicious amount at lower levels, especially compared to some of the other players.
Yeah, the one that came to my mind from my players, what my players have done for me was I had one which dipped 3 levels into Druid and got the Circle of the Moon and was a
Hmm.
Barbarian Tome of the Bear.
Oh no.
Um, and it wasn't too breaking. It was just there was no way they were ever going to die,
Yeah.
ever. They just have so many hit points and resistances and stuff. So that was the one that popped to my head. But I do know just like dipping into rogue can be quite good, and dipping into fighter to get the action surge can be
That's
quite
true.
good as well.
Yeah.
They're the ones I see more, just like little dips. I
Mm-hmm.
actually did play a storm sorcerer dipping into the Tempest Cleric to get the Channel Divinity, where you do max damage on any lightning or thunder stuff you do. So
Yeah.
ended up with Lightning Bolt and then could use Channel Divinity. So the 8d6 just did max damage,
That's
which
really
was
cool.
obviously a lot, which was quite fun. But it
Yeah.
took a while to get there. Rich is saying Warlock and Paladin and Warlock and Bard are great combos, which sort of ties into what you were saying. And also saying the Warlock feels like it's designed to be dual classed.
Yeah. I agree with that, especially because of like the features that you end up getting later on as a Warlock don't seem as like tied to the class. Like it just there's a lot of modularity with it, and I love them. I think Warlocks are great, but they do seem to lend themselves really well to multi classes. But I also agree that like Rogue and Fighter with the low level dips, you get a lot out of those early abilities, like early class features. I never really fully thought about a 3-level dip into Druid, but that does sound like a lot. Like it's already enough to deal with just a Moon Druid's wild shape, and then having to deal with that on top of a Barbarian is, like you said, like, the character's just never going to die.
Yeah. Which also say a monk with 2 levels in fighter for the action surge, so just punch all day long. Cool. We got so How to D&D said you could use a voice modulator as well instead of the text to speech. To be helpful. We got the Lion of Khmer over on Twitch saying I'm a hopeless theory crafter, but I try to best to optimize silly or interesting interactions rather than just pure power, since I find that usually leads to more interesting characters for building my stories around with unusual race or class picks I might not have otherwise considered. That's definitely a good way to go. That's definitely a good way to go. Hello to Eldridge Highlight, I think is how you say it, over on Twitch as well. And Josh is also saying Fighter is one of my favourite small dips for builds. Okay, on to the next question then, which is Josh from Dungeoneers Pack. What MTG mechanic do you think would be a great addition to D&D 5e?
Ooh, I gotta think about that one. I need to. I wish I could pull up like a list of of Magic mechanics.
I can't help you here, I'm afraid.
No, you're good. You're good. There's just so many of them. Like it's that is a tough question. You stumped me there.
Let's come back to that one then. Keep
Yeah,
that in the
yeah.
back
I'll
of your
think about
mind.
that one.
We'll come back into that one. So, what is your favourite class to play / least favourite class to play from the Cleric Corner over on YouTube?
Tough question, given that I am a forever DM. But I have played a couple of games now. I've started a weekly game on Mondays, and I've played a couple of like one-offs here and there. And so I don't really have a least favorite, right? Because if I have the opportunity to play, it's great. I love it. And I've played and really enjoyed both Bard and Cleric. Actually, I'm playing a Peace Cleric, which I know a lot of people feel is very strong, and I do feel like it is very strong. But I really enjoy both Bard and Cleric. I want to try a lot of other classes. I want to play more, but normally I end up designing characters and then they just kind of live in the world as NPCs, or they just kind of live in the back of my mind. Like I really want to. And I forgot the username of the person who suggested like interesting ideas or like flavor for characters rather than min-maxing. But it made me think of like a character concept that I had for an artificer that's a chef, like that uses like cook's tools or chef's tools. Because that just seems fun. But there's a hobgoblin in my current weekly game that essentially is that character. Like it's not a DMPC or anything, but some of the ideas have fallen into that NPC.
Yeah, I like it. For me, Cleric is always probably going to be my favourite to play. I just like the versatility. I like how different the subclasses are. Like you can play a Tempest Cleric or you can play a Nature Cleric, and they're very different.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The least favourite that I have played was actually the Fighter. And that was just because of my playstyle. I like spells, so like Wizards, Cleric, Druid are really good for me. And I played a Fighter. I don't think I would like playing a monk either. Probably wouldn't like playing a barbarian. I just have never tried. I just prefer spellcasters. So just they're probably worse for me. Not that they're bad classes, just for me.
Yeah, it's just
That is,
about play style.
exactly. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So this was over on Twitter. srobbie25 asked, if you end a session RPing a big emotion or reaction, how do you get yourself back into that emotional mindset at the start of the next session? So how do you get you and your players, I guess, back into the mood if you leave on a cliffhanger?
That's a really really good question. I think that I have I don't recap what happened in the last game for my players. My wife actually takes like copious notes, and she normally does the recap from last session or last game. And I think that helps kind of put everyone back in the mindset because it is from the player perspective. And then if there's anything that like I need to address or touch on, I'll mention it. But I think that, and then depending on the severity of it, if I was using like kind of dynamic, like we have like color changing lights or like music or something like that, I can set those things back up again to kind of put everyone back in that headspace. And I think using that will help kind of transition everybody back into that the place that they were whenever it was that we played last. Right. Normally I play weekly, so it's not too hard for everybody to kind of fall back into place. But like, I mean, the last time we played that game was a couple weeks ago now, so I know it will take more of like it goes back to communication, more of a conversation the next time we play to get everybody back in that headspace.
Yeah, I think I sort of read this as a cliffhanger, but it doesn't actually say a cliffhanger. But I really like ending on a cliffhanger to get people excited, because then as soon as they sit down for the next session and you recap and you say, "Oh, this is where you left off," everyone's like, "Oh yeah, let's get straight back into it. We need to deal with this situation." When it comes to emotion and stuff like that, I probably am not very good at getting people back into emotion. I probably wouldn't end on something emotional, to be honest. I would probably keep going, tie it up, and then start from somewhere else, just because I know I wouldn't be able to do this.
I actually, I agree with that. I think that like trying to resolve the emotion is important. Like, and it puts a lot of onus on the players to, and yourself as the DM to try to like get back into that headspace. And if you can resolve that or come to some resolution, I think it can be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Rich is asking if you have any experience from software games. How would you translate a Dark Souls style game into D&D? Have you played Dark Souls
I
at
have
all?
not played Dark Souls,
Okay, so
unfortunately.
this one's on me then, really, isn't
Yeah.
it? So I've played Dark Souls. I don't know how. I guess the obvious answer is you'd have to make it hard. Dark Souls are just known for being overly hard games. I don't know how you would make it into D&D though, because like a big part of the game is learning the patterns of the bosses, which maybe there's some clever way you could make that a mechanic where you have to learn a pattern for the bosses or something like that. I don't know.
Again, this is really off the cuff because I've never played Dark Souls, but you could theoretically do like, not for a full campaign, but like an adventure or a combat encounter, almost like a Groundhog Day situation where the players are like going through the same encounter or like boss fight again and again, and they're learning the boss's like tells. So maybe they're trapped in some sort of dungeon, right? And then they have to figure out how to fight the boss properly. And once they do, they end up escaping. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know if it could actually work. I don't think that would work for a long-term thing, but it might be able to work for like a bottle episode, right? Like an encounter.
yeah, because how I'm taking this question, because you can obviously make the setting D&D and
Yeah.
just play D&D in setting, but to me, Dark Souls is dying lots, but each time learning something new and then applying that when you come back alive again.
Right.
I don't know if that would be fun in D&D, to be honest, just dying over and over again and having to redo it, especially because combat can be quite time-consuming as it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. If anyone has any ideas, let me know in the chat for that one. And then the Lion of Khmer is saying this is truly the Dark Souls of D&D Dog Show channels. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, to be honest. I'm going to take it as one, but I have no idea. And then Fred from How to D&D saying that Cleric and Wizard is his favourite as well. Yeah, they're definitely my top two I just love the versatility of spells. So cool. So next question: do you prefer games where the PCs are basically superheroes, or ones that have them scrambling to succeed?
I prefer when they start out scrambling to succeed, but I'm okay with them becoming superheroes. I think that when they start as scrappy adventurers, especially because I tend to start my players at like first to third level, I feel like that feels way more realistic, and the players it's easier to role play that, right? Like you can get into character when the character feels like a real person, which is why I think that like doing even one shots at a higher level is way harder, unless it's just going to be combat driven. But then as the game goes on, like you get so many class features and so many abilities and like the wealth of spells that you can know and cast, you're going to end up feeling like a superhero. And I think that that should be embraced. Like that's fun. So again, maybe a cop out answer, but I think scrambling to succeed and then becoming superheroes, I think that's the way my games tend to go.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. When I think of superheroes, I think they're these people that are much more powerful than the general populace, and there's like a very small amount, which is really what level 15 D&D is, but
Mm-hmm.
or is in my games anyway. If you're getting to like level 10, then you're significantly more powerful than 95% of the population of the world. Whereas if you're level 1, you're still probably top like 50%, but maybe not as much. So yeah, I like the growth side of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you start as a bumbling idiot, and then eventually you become super powerful. Definitely. Okay, so not a scratch cast over on Twitter asked, what's the most or some of the most iconic items in D&D in your opinion?
I gotta say, bag of holding.
Yeah, definitely. That's a
Like
good one.
that to me, when I think of D&D, I think of the bag of holding. I think of a 10-foot pole, but that's because of like my dad's stories from when he played D&D.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think in terms of iconic items, those are probably the ones that I think of first.
Yeah, I think bag of holding's definitely a good shout. But I just saw Rich say it as well. I was about to say the flame tongue sword.
Mm-hmm.
That is as well, because everyone just wants a flaming sword because it's
Yeah.
cool. So that's one that comes to mind. Sovereign glue. Is it sovereign glue? Is that what? Yeah, that's another
Stubborn
one
glue.
that comes to mind.
I actually just gave that to my players. That was maybe a
Yeah, and
mistake.
then yeah, and then the last one is the deck of many things comes to
Mm,
mind as well
yeah.
as complete mayhem if you want to put that into your campaign. And I guess the artifacts as well, like Hand of Vecna, Eye of Vecna, and stuff like
Immovable
that.
rod too, I think,
Yeah,
is
with the
another
rod.
pretty common or like pretty like I think of D&D when I think of an immovable rod.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next one is Wondrous Maps over on Twitter asked, what does your world's creation myth look like?
Ooh, that's a
If you have
fascinating
one,
question.
it's quite a deep question.
Yeah, my current game doesn't actually have one because my current game was like the players and I kind of creating a world together where we talked about their backstories. We did like a session 0 together, and then we talked about like, okay, what cities are you guys from? And we populated like specific areas of the map. And then a lot of the game and a lot of the encounters were inspired by like folk tales and fairy tales. So they've run into like Rumpelstiltskin style characters and Jack and the Beanstalk and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really have a creation myth. And that was also in response to my last game where I spent almost too much time developing the like pantheon, and it got way too convoluted. And I needed to like course correct. So I didn't really like develop that too much because it wasn't something my players were interested for this game.
Yeah, cool. I think it's also one of those things that probably a lot of people don't think about when they first start homebrewing, and then maybe they come up with it later on.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is completely stolen from the Critical Well world. So this is something I do quite often. I take things that I like from different settings and then put it into my setting. So a big theme of my world is very similar to the Dragon Age setting, or the game setting, and so the creation myth I really liked the Critical Role one, so just stole it from there really, and then put it. I have made some changes, but yeah, I use that. Rich is asking, what's your favorite D&D card from the recent MTG block?
Oh, yeah, Tasha City's Laughter is really strong. I really, that's such a tough question. I gotta that and the other D&D question that came up, or the other Magic question that came up earlier.
Yeah, that's the mechanic one.
Yeah, the mechanic. So I'm gonna go back to Dungeoneers Pack's question, just because it's come up a lot in my homebrew about a mechanic that I think would be a great addition to 5e. And I would love to see something like Scry in 5e. So Scry in Magic is like, you look at the top end cards of your deck, and you can put them on the top or bottom in any order. And to me, whenever I'm homebrewing, like the only equivalent is the Wizard's Portent ability. Like that's the closest thing of like predicting the future. And I would love to see something like that, but I don't want to take that away from that Wizard subclass. And that's what I always worry about. So I would love to see something like Scry. But it's hard because that is like, that's specific to that brand of Wizard. And I wouldn't want to make that subclass less special. So I guess that would be my answer to that question. And then for my favorite D&D card from the most recent block, I loved the Beholders. I just loved seeing Beholders in Magic. So I think that's maybe one of the answers. And this is a very, very off the wall question, but there is a special art treatment for some of the lands. And I think it was Evolving Wilds. In Evolving Wilds and like Treasure Cave or something, they looked like modules. They look like adventure modules. And that I think was just a great choice. I loved it. I think they don't even look like Magic cards anymore, but they look straight up like old D&D modules, and I absolutely love that. So that's not even mechanical to Magic. That's more D&D, but I absolutely love the way those cards looked.
That's cool. Unfortunately, I don't have an opinion on this because I don't know any of the cards. So I haven't looked at any of. Well, I've seen pictures of them online, but I haven't actually seen them. So it's all down to you, that one. If you are liking this, if you could give this video a like if you're on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it. It would help more people see that we do this show, and then they can get their questions answered. And if you're over on Twitch or Facebook, you can follow the page as well, and then you'll get notified when we go live each week, which is every Sunday. Cool. So we got the Lion of Khmer over on Twitch saying, from my own playing, I've left the words creation ambiguous because the setting is currently undergoing a crisis, which both causes the answer to be lost to time and also irrelevant. The answer I have in my head, though, is just a wizard did it, which is a good place to start. I think. Yeah. I think the. Somewhat, obviously, if you're religious, you might disagree with this, but somewhat the real world is like that. No one really knows. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of no one knowing, but there being like some main theories that affect the world, similar to the real world as well. But when you can talk to gods and to angels and stuff like that, you have to have. Well, you can have some sort of understanding.
I also like. I think I would like if different cultures had different creation myths in a game where that was relevant. I think that would be really cool because I think that would flesh out different cultures and make different like continents or different groups or organizations on your world feel more kind of individual. And I don't know. I think that would be an interesting way to approach it. But like you said, it is different when you can actually commune with the gods and maybe get a more definitive answer.
Yeah, definitely. Rich saying that it's going to send the D&D cards in Discord. Thank you very much. I'll take a look at them. If you would like to join my Discord channel as well, it is down in the description, so you can come and have a look there. Right on to the next question. Where were we? So it is. Oh, so this is the one I alluded to earlier. So Hero Walks over on Twitter said, "What are some of your favorite ways to spend downtime?"
So I really like crafting. Like when I'm a player, I like thinking about things to kind of make my current player character isn't really big on that. My current player character would probably be just trying to like help people. He has a guilty conscience for things that he's been involved in. So I think he would just be trying to like make amends and help out people or help out those who are in need. In terms of my players, how they tend to spend downtime, I have one player currently who's starting a business. Like she's essentially starting like an Airbnb in D&D. Like she has a home now and she's like starting to decorate it and I guess Animal Crossing-esque in a way. And then I have like my wife's wizard is working on like crafting spells and creating her own spells is something that she's been like potentially toying around with. And the last player character in my weekly game, she is this like mouse folk adventurer, and most of her downtime is spent like kind of reconnecting with her community and like sharing the stories and like bringing back the trophies from the adventures that she's been on. Because like her like mouse folk enclave is like one of the most important things and it's why she adventures. So that's kind of the long-winded answer to that question from all perspectives.
I really like it. You said a few of them. I like it when my players want to find out more about the world or the place they are. It's just really satisfying that they actually care and stuff. So if like creating a business is awesome because that means they want to actually, investigate the world and get a bit more out of it. I like it when a player goes to find rumors and stuff like that as well to find out what else is happening in the region. Anything that really that shows they're interested in the world and what's going on in it and stuff like that. I'm having a quick scroll through of the cards, and the ones that stood out to me, I have no idea if they're any good or not. But I see there is a flump card, which automatically makes me want it because I do love a flump, and then a gelatinous cube as well. Classic D&D monsters.
One of the things that they did with that set too is they come out with art cards, which is just normally it's just the art of the card, like on the front of the card. And with that set specifically I think it was on the reverse of the art cards. I don't remember exactly. They had the stat blocks, like a modified kind of pared down version of the stat blocks. I haven't picked any of them up yet, but it's so cool because like that's a game piece you can use at D&D. Like you could use that as like a 2D token at a game table. And it has some of the stats. Now, it obviously doesn't have everything on there, but I thought that was a really, really cool idea to be able to use it at a D&D table.
Yeah, that sounds good. The clerk one is asking, tell us about a time your players created their BBEG. Has that ever happened to you? So what they did in your world made someone hate them.
Not through their actions, but they have created it through like their backstories. In my last campaign, 2 of my players, their backstories kind of coincided, and some of the evil ne'er-do-wells in their backstories met up and were working together and kind of trying to ascend to power and stop the party from stop them from stopping them, but also stop the party from like achieving their goals. So it wasn't someone they met along their way, but it was someone or some group that they had created when they were coming up with their characters' backstories.
Yeah, that's a really good way to do it as well. I do like putting backstory into the game, so having the big bad be part of the backstory as well. I had it once where they went to join basically a faction, and the idea was that the faction would say, no, you're too weak. They would then go away and be like, I'll show him, and like do something which shows they are strong. And then the faction would reach out and offer them a place and be like, sorry, we were wrong about you. Come join the faction. But what actually happened is they got denied from the faction. So they made a rival faction and basically just kept doing stuff to sabotage his faction. And it basically escalated to the point where I had to put a story behind him. And made him a Rakshasa. I can never say it. Rakshasa.
Yeah,
however you say that. Yeah. And that he ended up being a big bad. So that was good fun.
That's really cool.
I find sometimes you get the moment where you put in an NPC and then the players either love them significantly more than you think they were going to, or hate them. And then I like to use that.
I have 2 examples of that quickly, if you don't mind. Because my players interacted with a bugbear at the very beginning of the current campaign that we're playing, and they fell in love with this bugbear, and they charmed this bugbear, and currently this bugbear is now like a sidekick of theirs who is traveling around, and they encouraged the bugbear to open a restaurant, and now he has this like restaurant outside of town, and he travels around with them and fights with them and tries to find new ingredients whenever he goes to a new town, to bring them back, and he started franchising his restaurant. Like it's wild. I never expect this was just supposed to be someone who was working with like a hag early on in the campaign, and now he's like their best bud. And then one of the like town mayors from a first town they were in, they found out that character was lying to the town, and that mayor ended up running off, and he's come back up a couple times since, where like he was working with I overuse hags. He was working with a hag, and he turned into kind of a Pied Piper who was luring children out of the town. They've officially dealt with him now, but I like using recurring characters, especially whether it's for good or for evil. I like using recurring characters when it's a character that the players tend to latch onto for whatever reason.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good way to be dynamic as a DM as well, to run with what you see from the characters. So we've got Fred at How to D&D. What is your favourite type of adventure to run, homebrew or pre-made? What pre-made adventures have you run? So we sort of said this at the beginning of the stream for you. Have you run any pre-made?
Just Phandelver.
Oh, okay. So you mainly homebrew and do
Yes.
Phandelver. I am mainly homebrew, but take a lot of inspiration from stuff. So, for example, I basically took the entirety of the Waterdeep campaign, Dragon Heist, and put it into a part of a campaign, and put it in a different city and change some bits. The only pre-made adventures I have run as written, it was Rise of Tiamat, which I wasn't really a fan of. I don't think that was my first experience of running a pre-made adventure. And it wasn't the best. And then Curse of Strahd I've done multiple times now. That's the only one which I really enjoyed and I think was great. Actually, your videos, Fred, helped me a lot when I first ran Curse of Strahd. You made quite a lot of videos of how to run it, and I think I'm currently running it as well, so this will be my third time. I do change bits of it. There's some bits I don't like, or some bits I could think better ways of doing it, but generally I run that.
I actually have a question about that, because I'm so used to running homebrew, and like I tend to incorporate my player's backstory into the world as we're building it, like during session 0. That's one of the biggest things that I've had as like a mental block when it comes to the pre-published stuff. Do you like, how much of the pre-published campaign do you like share with your players beforehand, or like do you tell them like, okay, this is like kind of, this is the box, these are the limitations, this is what we're going to be playing, or the genre, so then they can tailor their characters to that? Like, how does that work? Because that's always been a sticking point for me.
Yeah, so with Curse of Strahd, because it is very different in terms of genre, because it's gothic horror. I do say it's going to be a gothic horror one. For the other ones I've done, I wouldn't say stuff like that. I don't say any. Well, I hope none of them read anything before ahead of time and stuff like that. I don't say anything about a box or anything like that, and I still link people's backstory into it. So, for example, someone's backstory had a brother that was lost in the woods when they were younger, and then for those of you that know Curse of Strahd, I made Isaac the brother that had gone missing. So that was a thing. And then so I still tie backstory in. I just tie it into the book, which obviously when they can't pre-write that in for you, so you have to be quite creative in a way sometimes, especially Curse of Strahd has so many things you could tie in as well. And if I was just running Curse of Strahd and then leaving it, so most of the time I'll run Curse of Strahd and then go into something else, or I'll run something else that goes into Curse of Strahd. But if I was just doing Curse of Strahd, I would tell them like some hooks. So I'd be like, if you wanted to be involved with this side of it, you can be, and stuff like that.
Okay, that makes sense. I've heard really, really good things about Curse of Strahd. I think if I were to run a published campaign, it would probably be Curse of Strahd, because I've just heard everyone rave about it.
Yeah, I think for me, because I was a bit disappointed by Rise of Tiamat, which is, I guess, your traditional D&D high
Hmm.
fantasy style thing, and then I read Curse of Strahd, and I was like, oh, like you can do this as well, because in my head D&D was very high fantasy, and so I was relatively new when I read Curse of Strahd, and then I was like, oh, you can do this, and there's some cool elements in there as well, and uh, the and Strahd as well was what hooked me in. The big bad Strahd is because in Rise of Tiamat you don't actually see the big bad until the final battle,
Hmm.
whereas in Curse of Strahd they basically tell you to introduce him as many times as you can and like make it clear the characters don't want to fight him because he's very powerful, but introduce him, get him to tease them a bit, get them to play with them a bit, and that was a lot of fun from a DM point of view as well.
And I'm sure that
Uh,
helps players focus too. Like that, I think
mm.
that does sound really good. That sounds cool.
Fred said, "I tell the players as much as possible to allow them to build character for the campaign without revealing the story elements," which is
Yeah, I feel like that's what I would
what I do
do.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so next question is from Rich. Do you have any banned classes, subclasses, or items or abilities in your game?
I don't, but I don't play with min maxers, so I don't really ever have to worry about too much. Honestly, the closest thing that I've come up with, or that like the closest thing that's happened with me in that regard is like homebrewing something and then telling my players like, hey, if this is too much, then we need to scale it back the next game or whatever. Maybe it needs to reset it a long rest instead of a short rest, or it has to have fewer charges or whatever. My players are always super flexible with that, but I've never had to ban anything. I guess I've kind of, given that I've never used the deck of many things yet, maybe I have personally banned that from myself. But I would love to sow chaos with that item, but I just haven't thrown it at my players.
Yeah, I am the same boat. I haven't banned or anything from the core books. If someone approaches me and says they saw this homebrew from a different creator, I'll read it, see if I think it is viable, because sometimes they're ridiculous or sometimes they're
Yes.
really underpowered, and go from there with the pretense that, okay, maybe we'll change it as we go along and work out if it is underpowered and overpowered. But I'm completely fine with that. As long as they come with a cool idea for a character, and they don't just want to do it because it's powerful. Um, yeah, I'm fine with pretty much anything. And then I guess the same as you for items. If there's anything that I just don't not interested in or think, oh, that's going to ruin the game, I just don't give it to the players.
Right.
But yeah, I did do deck many things once, and it was good fun. But I
Yeah.
did it right at the end of a campaign, so they can't have mucked it up too much.
That's what I'm thinking about doing. Or like I'm considering maybe when this current campaign comes to a close, just throwing that in, like it gets close to a narrative end, throwing that in there just to see what happens.
Definitely. Okay, so how to D&D. Fred says, "What is your favorite construct monster or race in D&D and why?" I might have to bring
Oh,
up a list
yeah.
here because I can't actually think of one off the top of my head.
That's so tough. I'd have to, can you screen share that list perchance?
Yeah, I
That's a,
will.
I will say in terms of race, the auto gnome that's in the UA, I believe that's considered a construct. It's been a while since I've read the UA, but I love that little auto gnome like race option in the Unearthed Arcana, and I think that I'd love to be able to reflavor that. I think I commented this actually on one of Cleric Corner's videos, on one of Riker's videos, that like the auto gnome would be perfect for the mirror from Magic the Gathering, which are these little like, they look not gnomish, but like they're kind of these small, maybe chicken or bird looking creatures that are constructs. So that would be my answer for race. Would be the auto gnome, and I maybe the animated armor is always cool. I think that that's considered a construct. Uh,
Yeah, I think so.
and the doll, I think you're scrolling by right now. The living doll and the doll from
Yeah,
I think it's
the-
either in Wild Beyond the Witchlight or the Ravenloft book. The doll that is the creepy doll, very creepy doll.
yeah. I like the hut as well from Curse of Strahd. So there's a living hut, which is quite fun. It's pretty pretty deadly, but that's good fun.
Mhm.
I do also like the drones, monodrone,
Yes.
duodrone, and all of them as well. They're quite fun to use. I think that's pretty much everything that has come to my attention. Well, I've been scrolling through quite quickly, so if you've not been able to follow along, but I think that's pretty much everything. I do just like golems as well. I use
Yeah.
golems quite a lot. I think they're quite fun because there's sort of sometimes with players there's this thing about should I kill it, should I not kill it. I feel like
Mhm.
if you're throwing a construct at them, they almost certainly know that okay, this just needs to die because it is attacking me. I can't reason with this. It's like most of the time anyway. We've got them, not all of
That
the time.
I completely agree. It helps kind of it removes the weight of that like moral ambiguity that's associated
Mm,
with a lot of other bad guys. I think Colville may have even mentioned, it might not have been Colville. I don't remember who it was, but there was a video recently, relatively recently, about like why zombies are such good bad guys for the same reason or for a similar reason. I guess zombies are a little different because they were human at some point, but like having some very clear bad guy that doesn't have that moral quandary associated with it. And golems do work really well for that. I actually just started homebrewing a reflective golem, like a mirror golem, that can like kind of bounce spells off of it based on the way it's constructed.
yeah, nice. Yeah, I think that's a whole topic in itself, I guess, about the whole moral ambiguity.
Hmm.
In fact, one of my best performing tweets was about should are all orcs evil? Should all orcs be evil? And like big discussions of some people saying yes, they like all orcs to be evil in their games, so that if someone comes across as an orc, they know that it's okay to kill it.
Right.
And then there's other people who say no, they're sentient, so they can make their own choices and be
Yep.
good and evil and stuff. So yeah, I guess that's a whole video
Yeah. It's
in
a
amongst
super
itself.
complex topic.
Yeah. We're going to be ending soon, so if anyone has any last minute questions, chuck them in now. I'll grab one more from Twitter here. So, what is your favourite part of developing a new campaign from
Oh,
Semi Homebrew over on Twitter?
that's an awesome question. I think the potential energy of it all, right? Like because everything is homebrew, I can there are no limits, there are no bounds. So I can pull in whatever I want. It can be whatever genre I want. I can use any kind of inspiration. And although that can be like analytically overwhelming, I think that I just love the freedom. And there's kind of a static excitement, especially when you like incorporate the players and you talk about like what kind of game they want to play, and then you start to narrow it down. And I really love that stuff. Like it's so exciting, the beginning of a campaign for those reasons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One for me is actually the player backstories.
Hmm.
I really enjoy getting the new player backstories, and then it just makes my imagination go crazy about how to integrate that into the campaign. Probably spend too much time on it because most of the time it doesn't come up as
Yep.
much as I put detail in. But that's one of my favorite parts is definitely getting the backstory, and then it feels a bit more collaborative than just you then sat making a story once they
Yep.
come in.
Yeah, I fully support that. I love incorporating my players into the world as much as possible and pulling in their backstories as much as I can.
Definitely. Fred is asking, what part of the world are you living in? So I'm England, if you can't tell by the voice, down in Kent, which is just below London. For those of you that just think England is London, it's not. There is other parts, and I'm just below London.
Yeah,
What about you?
I live in the States. I live in Florida specifically.
Florida, nice. I all I know about Florida is Disneyland. So there you go. Okay, let's grab one more question then. So, what's the most important question to ask in session zero from Jack True over on Twitter?
Ooh, there are so many important questions to ask. That's a
Yeah,
tough one.
it is, isn't it?
Um, like I I get this isn't really I think it's important to ask if there's something like what's off limits, or like what are we comfortable with, or how can we communicate our level of comfort with things, because I think that's really important because you never know what can kind of come across the wrong way with a table or with a player. I think that that's really cool. or like really necessary to bring up during a session 0. And I think also just like what pillar are you most looking forward to? Like what are you in it for the role play? Are you in it for like the hack and slash Diablo style like looting? What is either your player drive or your character drive or both? And I know that that's multiple questions, but it's very hard to limit it to just one. Session zeros are so important.
Yeah, I guess the one question would be what are you expecting from this, which sort
Yeah.
of incorporates that, because I always like to detail before a campaign starts what part is going to be roleplay, what part's going to be exploration, what part's going to be combat in sort of percentile wit, so they have an idea roughly. But yeah, you need to find out what people want, because one of my people pretty much would have been happy for 100% roleplay campaign, probably, which maybe they shouldn't be playing D&D at that point. I'm sure there's different systems for them, but yeah, whereas the one I'm currently running Curse of Strahd for, I think they quite enjoy combat, so it's a little bit more combat heavy than some of my previous ones. So I think, yeah, just what are you expecting is is a bit of a cop-out answer because it's so broad, but yeah, I would say that is the one.
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay, well, that's it for us. If you would like to go and check out any of Trevor's videos, down in the description is a link to his channel and a link over to his Twitter as well, so you can continue the conversation with him. So go and check him out. Is there anywhere else they can check you out, Trevor?
For now, just YouTube and Twitter. I think there is a TikTok account for I have a TikTok account for Classes and Constructs, but right now it's mostly just the YouTube shorts that I've been posting. I have a Twitch, but I haven't streamed anything yet. I've thought about whether it's homebrew design or stuff, but I haven't had the time. So YouTube and Twitter is where I'm at currently.
Perfect. And yeah, he makes a lot of shorts as well. So if you are a TikToker, if you like the short content, then yeah, go over and check him out, definitely. Thank you very much for coming as well, and thank you to everyone who's come by. There's quite a few D&D channels that have come by to hang out with us as well, so that is cool.
Awesome.
Just one last comment from How to D&D, Kent Rich, Trevor, Florida. You're in the same part of the world as Dungeon Class, Mr. Rex, Dungeon Masterpiece,
Wow.
Dastly D&D, and Roll for Initiative. There you go.
That's wild. I didn't know that. Small world.
If you didn't know that as well. Anyway, let's end it there. So thank you everyone for coming by, and I will be here again next week with a different guest. And I'm sure I'll get you on again in the future, Trevor.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. And until next time, happy gaming.